In yesterday's class, we learned what a relation was, we learned what a domain was, and we learned what a range was. We also learned quite a few ways of representing all that stuff. We learned about mapping diagrams, tables, we saw it on a graph, and we learned that we could also represent them in an equation. So just as a quick refresher, our domain is a list of all of our X values or our inputs. Our range is a list of all of our Y values or our outputs. Okay. And for this lesson today, for today's class, we are going to go over what our classwork was yesterday. So that way you guys have a bit more of some instruction about this. Okay. So I'm going to share my screen and we are going to go through portions of these problems. I'm not going to do all of it because some of it is a little bit repetitive, but what I will do is should help you get started if you are having trouble. So I'm going to share my screen. All right, here we are. So number one says, and actually before I even get to number one, if you look at this document, the formatting is a little bit funky. We have 1, 2, and then it starts with 1 and does 2 again. But this set of 1 and 2 is the same as the first set. You don't have to do these; it just repeats. And then you can do 3 right here, and then there's a 3 underneath it. It's the same as the one before it. So you just have to do 1, 2, and 3 once. You don't have to do them both times as they appear in this document. With that said, let us get started. Number one says use the mapping diagram to find the ordered pairs, make a table, plot a graph, and find the domain and range. Okay, that seems like it's a lot, but it really is not as difficult as it may seem initially. All the information we have is right here in this mapping diagram. So let's first start off by labeling this mapping diagram. On the left side of the mapping diagram, and it'll always be on the left, we have our inputs. Oops, misspelled that one. Inputs, which are our X values. Okay. And then right next to that, oops, I don't want to change that color. Next to this on the right side, and it will always be on the right side, we have our outputs, which are our Y values. Okay. So once again, input X, domain, output Y, range. And with that knowledge, you can actually go in and fill in the rest of this stuff pretty quickly, but we're going to go in the order that the question asks us to do. So it says do our ordered pairs first. When we write our ordered pairs, we have to put them in parentheses. Otherwise, it's just two numbers that are next to each other and we don't know what they mean. And when we go to write our ordered pairs from a mapping diagram, you're going to look at the number you're starting with. So we're going to start with this first number here. And then we see that it goes to two different numbers. We see that it goes to this 1, and then we see that it goes to this 3. That might be a little bit confusing, but the way we're going to think about this is that each of those lines indicates a separate ordered pair. So our first ordered pair, we have this -2 going to this 1. Our first ordered pair, we're going to come down here, and it's going to be a parentheses first, and then a -2, comma 1. Then we're going to close that parentheses. And then our next ordered pair, since this -2, we have another line here, and that's going to be another ordered pair. We're going to have our next ordered pair be, I'll start with the parentheses, -2, comma 3. Okay. So with this mapping diagram, we see that although we have one value, it has two arrows coming out, and those two arrows indicate two ordered pairs. And we've just gone through like half of our ordered pairs here. So we have -2, 1 and -2, 3. Our next one, we're just going to go right down this list for our inputs. It starts with 0, and that's going to -3. So our next ordered pair is going to be 0, comma, -3. And don't forget these parentheses. After this one, we have 1 going to 4. So that's going to be the ordered pair 1, 4. And then finally, we have this 3 going up to this 1. And that's going to be our last ordered pair, which is 3, 1. All right. And let me actually shrink this font a little bit so it fits better. Okay, and so from our mapping diagram, we were able to list our ordered pairs, and we can go from our mapping diagram to our table, from a mapping diagram to a graph, from a mapping diagram to a range. in our domain, we can go from any one of these to any of the other ones. And that's what makes this stuff super, super cool to me. All right. So now that we've done our ordered pairs, let's go ahead and look at this table. We've done this section. Now we're going to make our table. And the tricky part with this table is that while we do the mapping diagram, we only list it once. In the table, we list it however many times it appears. And we can look at our ordered pairs for that. So our X values in these ordered pairs, we have -2, -2, 0, 1, and 3. And I'm going to list them exactly in that order, okay? I'm going to try and keep the colors as close as possible. So we have -2, -2, -3. Oh, that's not right. -2, it should be 0, not -3. 0, 1, and 3. All right, writing with these is a little funky, but you can always go back in and move them so they look normal. So now that we've written out our X values, right from our ordered pairs, we could have also gone from our mapping diagram, which is super cool. I like that very much. We're going to write out our Y values, and those are going to come right from this ordered pair list down here. So our Y, we're going to try and do that one in green. Our first Y is going to be this 1. Our next Y is going to be this 3. Then we have -3. And 4. And finally, 1. And you don't have to take your time and organize them. I like to have my notes look decent and neat. That's why I'm taking the time to do it. So when I go back to it, it's quick to look at and make sense. So there we have it. We have done our ordered pairs down here. Ooh, now that we've done our ordered pairs here, we've done our table. Now let's go ahead and plot them. In case you all do not remember, when we plot, this green axis here is our Y, and this blue axis here is our X axis. All right. Let me go ahead and write those out. X and Y. Also, as another reminder, when we are plotting, we have to remember which directions are positive and negative. The right is the positive X direction. So that's going to be what color should I use? This is purple. That's going to be positive here. Up is the positive Y direction. So that's going to be a plus here. To the left is the negative X direction. So that's a negative here. And down is the negative Y direction. So that's a negative here. All right. That's what that's going to help us make sure we know where we're plotting. This middle section here, just a quick refresher, this is called the origin. Where the two bold lines cross, that is where we're always going to start to count our plots. So this first one is -2, 1. So I'm going to go 2 in the negative X direction. So that's 2 to the left, 1, 2. And then I'm going to go up 1. And that's going to be that one right there. If you're confused about which way to go first, remember that you have to go to the elevator before you can go up or down, right? So you're always going to go side to side first before you go up and down. So that's that first point plotted. Now let's do this second point. This is going to be -2, and then going to go up 3. 1, 2, 3. This next one is 0, -3. So I'm going to stay at the origin, and I'm going to go down 3. 1, 2, 3. I'm going to go 1, 4. So to the right once and up 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then I'm going to go to the right 3 times and up once for this last one. 3, 1. 1, 2, 3, 1. There we have it. We have plotted our graph. We have made our ordered pairs and made a table. So now finally, let's do the range. Let's do the range. First, I'm going to do the domain. When you write the domain, you're going to start with a capital D. You're going to do a colon, and then you're going to do this brace. it's going to be that curly bracket. It's called a brace. It's next to the P key on the keyboard in case you're having trouble finding it. And when we do our domain, I like to look right at this mapping table because the mapping diagram, I like to look right at the mapping diagram because the mapping diagram lists it from top to bottom, from least to greatest, and it only repeats it once, which is why they're so great to use. So I'm just going to write it in, -2013. That's going to be my domain. Those are my X values, my domain. All right, -2, comma 0, comma 1, comma 3. And then I'm going to close my brace. I forgot my one. There we go. So I'm going to close my brace, and there we are. We have our domain written. And now let's write our range. Let's change colors there. Once again, we can look right at our mapping diagram, and our range is already listed out. This is -3, 1, 3, 4. So I'm going to start by writing a capital R, colon, curly bracket, and I'm just going to type it in, -3, comma. Is that a -1? No, that's a +1. 1, comma, 3, comma, 4. Close my brace, and there we have our domain and our range, okay? That's all of that covered. If you have any questions on that, let me know, ask me, and I will do my best to help you. So that's number one covered. Number one is very much like number two. The only difference here is that with number two, it gives us our ordered pairs in a list format. So I'm not going to do number two through in its entirety, but I will help you all get started. First, what I'm going to do is label my mapping diagram. My left is always going to be my inputs. Those are going to be X. And then my right is always going to be output. That's going to be Y. All right. So that should help you get started if you get confused. Remember, our ordered pairs, the first coordinate is always the X. The second coordinate is always the Y. That should help you get started with reading the diagram. It already has the ordered pairs listed. You can make the table from that, go to the graph, and then do the domain and the range. If you have trouble or run into something where you can't figure it out, by all means, come ask one of us. So now we're going to skip this number 1 and 2 because those are just repeated. And we're going to come down to number 3. These things can be a little bit tricky, but if you just take a second and go slow, they make sense. All right. So number 3 says, find the domain and range of each relation and circle the best answer. I'm going to do the second one, and then I want you all to try the first one and the third one. If you run into problems, especially with the third one, by all means, come let me know. So if you think back to your notes, when we want to find our domain, we're going to go from left to right, just the way we read. And if the arrows are pointing in both directions, then it's all real numbers. We see going from left to right, oh, it's pointing to the left and it's pointing to the right. So that's going to be all real numbers for our domain. And since we see that, we know that it's not going to be A. We can cross A off, and the rest of them have all real numbers as part of the domain. So here is where we're going to look at the range. For the range, we're going to go from bottom to top. And if our arrows are pointing in two different areas, then it's all real numbers. They aren't pointing in two different directions. They're both pointed down, so we can cross out anything that has our range being all real numbers. And so that lets us get rid of B because it has a range as all real numbers. And now we don't really even have to think about it too much because this is saying, for C, it's saying our range is Y is less than or equal to 2. And then D is saying Y is less than or equal to 3. We don't have to think too hard about this, but if we look at what our Y value is on this, if we go over, if we find that ordered pair, it's going to be 1, 2, 3, -3, 1, 2, +2. Our Y value for this ordered pair would be +2, but our X value is -3. So that's where you got to be careful that you don't get caught up and mistaken with how to read these. So since our y value is -2 for this point, we know that it's going to be C. And we didn't even have to think too hard about that one. We just had to eliminate some things, okay? So go ahead, finish up number 3, finish up number 2, and submit this when you are done. If for whatever reason you have some trouble or you run into something and you can't figure it out, come back and let us know, all right?